Beyond the Hood, stories and strategies to fuel dealer growth.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond the Hood with TractorZoom. I'm your host, Andy Campbell, and our guest today is George Keane. This is part of a larger three-part series, and today we are specifically talking about change management and looking into the future. If you are interested in adapting to change for your dealership and future-proofing your dealership in this ever-shifting market, this episode is meant for you. We're going to talk with George specifically about implementing change at dealerships and making it stick. How do you adapt to industry shifts, especially now in the light of tariffs, uncertain markets, all the economic pressures, and then we're going to look forward and see what George thinks is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. I hope you can join me for this episode of Beyond the Hood with TractorZoom with George Keane. George, my next question is one that I don't know if it makes me a complete hypocrite or it stabs me a little, that I love spreadsheets. But I also understand that there's problems with them. And so how, now that we're talking about collecting this data and using it and making decisions off of it, how should dealers balance that potential love of spreadsheets with more of a systematic process or a platform?
My experience with dealerships in a variety of industries is pretty much the same of what I saw when I worked in an ag dealership. And that is, salespeople have been allowed to do their own thing for so many years that converting them to a CRM takes time, challenge, and commitment. If the dealer principal is committed to doing it, and the sales manager is committed to doing it, you've got to start showing salespeople that you're using the information in the CRM. Otherwise, they're going to do their own spreadsheet, they're going to use their day timer, they're going to use Outlook, whatever they've done in the past, and each of them does their own thing. Mm-hmm. But the dealership is paying salespeople to go out and talk with accounts, to gather data so that we can do a better job of selling. The more information we get into the CRM, the better our information and analytics can be. But in order to encourage and convince salespeople to do it, sales management, ownership, and anything else in the company has got to show salespeople that doing the work in the CRM has value. Mm-hmm. And that means I want to see a weekly meeting with what we did in our dealership. We had a weekly Tuesday morning sales call, and we had 6 branches. We had 18, 20 salespeople. Everyone called in on the telephone. This is pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. We didn't have video calls yet. Yeah. But everyone called in on the telephone, and sales manager went through what was in the CRM, what the open quotes were, what the contact activity was with salespeople. But the whole point was to show salespeople that what they're putting into the CRM has value, and we're utilizing it. If you don't demonstrate that to salespeople regularly, they're not going to put the effort into putting it into the CRM. Once you get a salesperson converted to doing that, all of a sudden they start to realize the opportunity and the information they have, and they start going back and saying, can I get a list of all the service work that's been done on this account? Because that'll start to tell them some things. But you've got to get them converted from, my dad used something called Daytimer, and he used it religiously. He'd put, appointments for next week. He'd put appointments for, the end of the year in his Daytimer, and he'd keep track of it. Well, a CRM's just the same thing. We're just doing it electronically.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have that back 1950.
But I love the aspect of, it is going to take a little bit of time, but most importantly is that commitment, the commitment from the top down, and then your point on utilization. So don't just do it for the sake of doing it, because I do hear that feedback every once in a while. It's just like, I got to click a button because I'm told to click a button, and it's not getting me anything. But having management come back and say, because you did this, now you benefit here, and now we're tracking your successes here. But I did want to talk to you about change management. And with change management, of course, the moniker is change is never easy, but it's always constant. And, you've said before that it's not the strongest who survive, it's those who adapt. Why do you think change is such a tough sell, especially in the equipment dealership industry?
I think we get comfortable with what we've been doing, and we don't see enough value in the change to encourage people to want to do it. But one of the questions I've asked people in numerous seminars, what is the 6th largest automotive dealer in the U.S. of U.S. car makers? And you don't know it, do you? Because they don't exist anymore. The Dodge Company, the Chrysler Company, the Pontiac Company, the Hudson Company, all of those have consolidated. They've all been bought up and disappeared. I remember Nash Rambler. I'm old enough. If we don't change, we're going to either become part of something else or we're going to close down. One of the biggest things I think that we've got to pay attention to is, if we're going to change, we've got to have commitment from the top executive to make it happen. Otherwise, people are going to push back and say, he doesn't care or she doesn't care. And if we wait them out, we'll get through it. You mentioned the best practice groups that I facilitate. And I know numerous times I've gone into a dealership after the dealer principal was at a best practice meeting. And talking with managers, they'd say, well, he was at one of those meetings. Give him a couple weeks. He'll calm down and he'll forget about it. That tells me the guy doesn't have the commitment to make that change. If the owner is really committed, then it's not just a question of coming back and saying, I want you to do this. It's investing the money, the time, the change in management structure. You might have to take something off of someone's plate so that they have time to do whatever this is. It's, are you going to invest in putting that product in? Then you got to go buy it. You got to put it on the showroom floor. You're not going to sell it without it. But the executive commitment for change has got to be all of that. It's not just coming back and saying, I had this great idea, talked to a friend of mine, and we should do this. That's not commitment. It's a nice creative idea, but it's not commitment. And your employees learn whether you're committed to things or not. So you got to start figuring that out. If you want change, you're going to have to be committed to it.
Hey everybody, a quick break from the show and then we're going to get you right back to the conversation. But I wanted to take a moment to let you know how TractorZoom is partnering with all of our dealership partners to fuel their dealership growth. We're doing that with TractorZoom Pro to give people better valuations, faster access to it, and the ability to manage their inventory using AI, using large data. Even if their dealership doesn't have the capacity to develop the AI and the large data themselves, it's all there within TractorZoom Pro. And also with Anvil Pro, integrated business systems solution. You can actually cut costs by integrating solutions, not paying for all these extra one-offs, and keep people in the same solution so you're not constantly switching screens. And then you could optimize your workflows, do a lot of things with automation that technology should be able to do right now. So just two ways that TractorZoom is working with our dealer partners to really help them fuel their dealership growth. Okay, you can check out some links in the show notes. You can also go to TractorZoomPro.com to check all that stuff out. But we'd love to at least show you all the different ways that we're helping our dealership partners. Okay, let's get back to the show. Hope you're enjoying it. Okay, so I've got a side question for you here then. And this is not one that I planned on, so I apologize for springing it on you. But for TractorZoom with our product Anvil and a new dealership intelligence platform, CRM, inventory, and everything baked in, that can be a big change for a lot of dealerships. And so how much onus is on us as that software partner provider to help the dealer principal and that leadership team execute that change management?
Well, as I said earlier, if the dealership is going to look at implementing a change with CRM, the owner and the managers, using that term plural, have got to be using the data. They've got to show the employees that they're paying attention to it, that it cares, that they care, that it matters. And if they communicate that to the employees are going to respond saying, okay, it's important. I need to do this. Software provider, computer systems, my experience is they need to come in and monitor what the dealership is doing with it. I spent 10 years with a software company. My experience, even to this day, is most dealerships only use 50% of the software they have. What I'd like to see happen is somebody come in 6 months later, a year later, a year after that, and continue looking at what the dealership is using and say, you're not doing this. What procedure, what policy, what obstruction do you have? Sometimes it's been, well, Charlie's always done it on a spreadsheet, and we let Charlie do it because he likes that. But the rest of the dealership doesn't have access to that spreadsheet. Charlie's the only person. He's also our bottleneck on getting access to that data. I want the entire dealership to have as much access to everything as I can get them. I want salespeople to be able to look at service invoices so that they can see what service has been done for every one of their accounts. I want service to know what is being quoted, so when the customer calls and says, I've got this unit that needs repair, they don't say, well, you're on COD. You don't do that if you've got a quote out there.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to negotiate, but I don't want to shut a customer down that we're currently trying to sell a large piece of equipment. But the more access we can have for all members of the dealership into everything that's going on, the better we can operate and take care of customers. So, to your question, I'd like to have the software provider for each of the various systems I have come in and do an audit on a regular basis and recommend training or conversion. Maybe that spreadsheet Charlie has can work in the system. We just never trained Charlie on how to do it. I once had a dealer in California ask me, well, I want to track this information based on what we're doing in the invoices. And he said, there's no field for me to put that in. And I showed him where the field could be. It wasn't meant for that, but we could put that information in there. And then we run a report with that filter that asks for that particular piece of information. He said, I like that. You didn't tell me the software couldn't do it. You told me how the software could do it. So from the software side, how do we handle the customer's needs, even though we didn't design the software to do that function that the dealer is asking about? How do we get the software to do that?
No, I love that perspective. I mean, not just guiding the customer through it, which is great in some conversations that we're having with our partners right now, but also your perspective shift on, can or cannot the software do it, but how do we enable you, Charlie, to utilize that spreadsheet? Because I think that is a big piece of change management, of realizing they are where they are. You've got to meet them where they are. But then still that integration and everybody using the same system is essential.
Another element on change management, I've kind of focused on the commitment question from leadership. But additionally, with change management, we want to make this change. How do we measure what that is? What is that change? So we're currently doing X and we want to do Y. How do we identify when we reach Y? Okay. What are we going to use to measure that we are making progress? Is there a report? Is there something visual or concrete that we can identify? And then what's our feedback to tell us how to change what we're doing so that we get there better, faster, or directly, whatever. So we want commitment, we need a target, we need feedback, we need to, have a process. Those are all elements of change management.
You sure you weren't an engineer in another life? It matches up, I think, with a couple of classes I took. Okay, I would like to change topics here now because it is the here and now, and tariffs seem to be on the radio every single second, and they just seem to change every other second.
Yep.
So with all of that uncertainty out there, what's your take on how the current situation, which is, and to paraphrase this, in a point in time, tariffs were applied across the board last week or the week before. They've since been pulled back for every country. I think the Chinese or the Canadian and Mexican tariffs remain to some extent, and then the Chinese ones 100%, 150% are remaining right now, and that is I think the key focus and challenge for certainly any soybean farmer out there right now. So that's where we are right now. in your perspective, is this short-term pain? Is this something long-term that we need to deal with? And how do you think dealers should or need to respond?
I think my first comment is our president considers himself a negotiator, and he feels this is his tool for negotiation. Okay? Whether I agree with it or not, that's his approach. That's what he's trying to do. I just read a post this morning where somebody was complaining that, they got a surcharge for tariff when they got a delivery. And they said, well, I thought Canada was supposed to pay this. No. Tariffs are not something the other country or supplier pays. Tariffs are something we pay here because it's an increase on the price. So, used equipment directly is not going to have a tariff. It's already here. You can probably sell used equipment without worrying about tariffs. New equipment, a lot of that's going to depend on where it's coming from, what sources, what the input to that product is. You might have something being built in Iowa, but if they had to import stuff from another country in order to build it, you're still going to have the impact of prices. One of the best things I've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks was a dealer in Pennsylvania that did about a 12, 15-minute video targeted at their customers to explain to them why tariffs were not going to significantly impact their customers because of what they have prior to tariffs, what they carry as primary products, which are not from offshore, predominantly American, North American made product, and what the impact is of tariff on the cost, not the selling price. As a video, it was well presented with a positive upbeat of how to sell the dealer handling tariffs so that it will not have a significant impact on the customers buying products. I think we've heard so much about tariffs, and we're so struck with the pain of dealing with tariffs, but that's between the manufacturer and the dealer. I think we need to once in a while step back from that, pay attention to what are we as a dealer going to say to our customers. How do we put a spin on this to mitigate? I don't think we can eliminate, but how do we mitigate the impact of this whole tariff discussion on how we're selling to customers? I don't want to see a recession. I don't want to see a depression. But I think some of it is going to be the retailers, dealers. How do we communicate with customers on getting them to continue to spend money, to buy equipment, to buy parts, and how do we explain to them that we are the best choice for doing service for them? Okay, service does not impact, tariff does not impact service. Okay, will impact equipment and parts, but how do we spin it to get more service? That also is going to improve things for the dealership.
Right, which is kind of what you alluded to earlier with a 20, 25, 26 strategy when times are a little tighter.
Yep.
Rely on that higher margin, more adaptable product or the service. Okay, so switching from that real quick and going maybe to another extreme and talking data and AI. It's something that obviously gets talked about a lot here at TractorZoom. We've got a lot of different AI initiatives. Do you think dealers can start using AI today in sales, training, strategy? Have you seen it been used?
I think there's good opportunity for dealers to use AI in training. A recent survey that I saw basically said that training that was done using AI, customized to the individual taking the training, was 75% more effective.
Oh.
What would have taken 2 years worth of training was done in 6 months.
Wow.
Okay. The AI function can feedback to the person who's being trained for the things they're not getting in their style, instead of just, here's the normal problems. So I think AI, especially in training, is an opportunity for dealers. And we should be looking for what else is out there. How do we use it? How do we get our people involved in it? Think about also, we've got a serious problem with finding technicians.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem in every equipment industry, whether you're automotive or your golf courses. Okay. But if we could use AI, let me give you an example. I've got from a couple of years ago with a dealership I was working in. I had a parts person who would like to be a technician. He had no other training except he worked in the parts department. He was not a mechanic automatically. He's not one of those guys that, just knew how to use engines. But if I could use AI to start teaching that person how to handle a tune-up, if I could use AI to teach them how to handle lawnmower maintenance, I'm trying to take a small engine, not a big, 400 horsepower tractor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if I could teach that person how to handle a small engine and train them in just the lawnmower maintenance. From there, I want to take it to the next level and take them up to small tractors. But we could start to train our own in-house people and develop technicians without having to send them, somewhere for 6 months in an apprentice course or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think AI has a lot of opportunity we need to investigate.
No, that's a great idea. And back in my teaching days, I always was conflicted by giving tests, bringing in tests, taking forever to grade them, giving the test back a week later. And I knew that long of a break, things were washed out of their mind. And so any bit of feedback that I'm giving them is way too late for any meaningful retention and, that positive feedback loop you need to grow. But you're right. If you can utilize AI for training, it's personalized, it's instantaneous, it hits them where they need, what they need, when they need it. It's a great idea. Okay, so I know we've had a great long conversation, and I don't want to skip over some of these questions because you've had a long, great life with a lot of experiences and some learnings that I do want to draw from a little bit. So still, and I threw in 3 late ones that I'm going to spring on you here that are more dealership focused. But here's this question. What are 3 tools that you think all dealers need to have?
Retools. Um, I think the dealership in general needs to have a set of benchmarks for performance. Additionally, I think a dealership needs to keep in mind in the type of economy we live in anymore, you're either going to grow and probably buy another dealership, another location, or you're going to sell to another dealership. Consolidation has been going on for the last 20, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
If consolidation is continuing, and it's really dominant in this industry, which direction are you going to go? Either direction, I think you need to be focused on being so profitable that you're either capable of taking on the next location next to you or two locations and not hiccuping and having trouble, or you need to be so profitable and strong that somebody pays you a good price for your dealership. Which one are you going to be? But you're not going to sit there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're currently a single location dealership, are you going to become a 2-location, a 3-location, a 4-location dealership? To do that, you need financial strength, you need management strength, you need vision. If you're a 1-location dealership and you're not going to do that, then are you strong enough that you can command a very good price for your location and your customer base and your employees? Have you developed the dealership to be so strong that you're going to make a good premium on what the person is paying for? The last thing you want to be is a dealership that somebody just comes in and pays for the assets.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to be liquidation material.
Yep.
Good. In your experience, and you've got a lot of experience in the dealership and data world, how has data changed the way that you either make decisions or you see dealers make their decisions?
I think there's certainly a lot stronger approach to making decisions based on data now than there was 40, 50 years ago. It's not an emotional decision. It's much more, with the internet, I can contact other people that have done the same thing. I can look for customer reviews. I can look for specific return on investment. There's a lot of different ways to quantify decisions that we're making. And even without the impact of AI, I think people are using data to make those decisions from a leadership standpoint or even the frontline, parts counter.
Okay. A couple other quick questions here and things that our marketing team loves to use for social. But also, this first one is, just for me, really. Books. Do you have any books that you'd recommend?
One of the more interesting ones I've stumbled across recently was Dispatches from Farm Country. The guy that wrote it is a farm journalist, Jim Patrico. And what I really enjoyed about that is he's a real visual writer. As you read his, and it's kind of a collection of essays, if you will. But as you read his material, he writes in such a way that you could practically swear you're looking at a photograph. He's given you a very clear picture, whether he's talking North Dakota or Missouri. You've got a picture in your mind of where he's at when he's talking about those particular subjects that he was doing. I really enjoyed that one.
Good. I will have to check that one out. Next question. Advice that you'd give your younger self.
Become a plumber.
Yep.
I would have found employment more consistent, and probably would have saved a lot of money. Would not have had student loans or any of the rest of the things. But I didn't know that in high school.
Right. Good. And then on the flip side, what is some of the best advice that you've received?
I guess I've always tried to stay positive. I'm probably more than a glass half full. I'm kind of like a glass half full and it's still being filled type person. I'm, I feel there's always an opportunity, no matter what the condition is. So, things are going to be better tomorrow.
That's good. And actually, a great segue into the last question that I want to ask you, and I've been saving this one. Talking about tomorrow, what is your outlook for the farm equipment industry in the rest of 25, maybe in 26 and beyond?
As I've seen the reports on number of acres that are being in cultivation, as I've seen the size of that changing, I think we're going to continue to consolidate. I've made this comment earlier. As the customers consolidate, it becomes obvious that the dealers need to consolidate in order to serve the customers. This is not something that we consolidate the dealerships just for the hell of it. This is an issue of servicing customers. When the customer has so much geography that, we are trying to take care of them, they don't want to deal with 2 and 3 and 4 different companies. They want one company they can negotiate with and buy whatever the products are. That's why they want us to have multiple locations to service their geography. So if they've got 12,000 acres, they want to have one dealer. They want one vendor they can deal with. They become a very important customer that way. But whether it's a hay producer in Virginia or a grain producer out in the Midwest, the customer is looking for one company to be the solution for their products. And I think that's why we're going to continue to see a certain amount of consolidation. Okay, we've seen a lot already. I continue seeing it in the news where so-and-so just bought so-and-so. It's happening every week. It's not something which is consistently slowed down. I do see this tariff situation being a certain amount of confusion for a while. I would like to say it's going to disappear in 6 months, but I don't know that I can predict that. But I think we need to be looking at how do we handle that in our sales pitch with the customers. You got to handle it one way with the manufacturer, but how do you handle it with the customers? You need to be proactive and plan what your discussion is as a dealership with those customers. If you leave it to the news, they're all going to talk about how bad things are. How do you pitch your approach to customers so that they get a positive attitude and want to work with you as a dealership?
That's good. That's great advice. And I think it recaps a lot of the conversation that we had today, too, of being proactive, of developing a process and getting out in front of things. Because like the consolidation point that you had, you're either going to happen to it or it's going to happen to you. And
yes.
So the only way is to truly be proactive. Good. Well, George, I really appreciate all the time that you've given me, and this has been fantastic. I know you're going to be at the Dealership Mind Summit in Iowa City, which is my old stomping grounds and close to my backyard. So I hope to meet you there this summer. And anyways, yes, we did mention, what was your favorite book, but at the same time, I do want to give a good plug because you have an incredible book, actually a couple that are out there, right?
Yep. There's 2 books. You can find them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any number of sites that handle online purchasing. But Sales Management in the Equipment Dealership and Service Management in an Equipment Dealership. And if people are interested in that, they can either purchase them online or they can contact me and I can give them another link.
Good. Well, we will throw those links in our show notes. This show, we'll have it on all the channels, all the socials, and all the things. But again, George, I want to thank you a ton for joining me on Beyond the Hood. And for all of our listeners out there, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe, follow. Again, do all the things on all the socials like you need to do. And that way you'll get alerted to the next time that we come out with new additional content. But anyways, from Tractor Zoom and Beyond the Hood, this is Andy Campbell and George Keane. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention, and have a great day. Take care.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for joining me in another episode of Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom. If you enjoyed this discussion with George on change management, looking into the future, you'll also enjoy what we have at TractorZoomPro.com. We have under our resources tab a plethora of blogs, old webinars, and a lot of information, both in terms of trends and also best practices within dealerships. Go over to TractorZoomPro.com, check out our resources tab, and check out those blogs and events. Take care, and thank you again.